Good evening. A viewer phoned me today and said, for goodness sake, Webster, on the new time slot at 5 o'clock, don't be so gruff. Be a little happier. Smile. Some days it's difficult to smile because the economy of British Columbia got another major body blow today. Now, we need this one like we need a hole in the head. 20,000 IWA workers on strikes, all kinds of problems with tariff wars and trade wars with the Americans, and what happens? 4,000 longshoremen in every port in British Columbia, from Prince Rupert to Nanaimo and Victoria to Vancouver, will be locked out at 1 a.m. Monday. Now, there's no equivocation about that because the dispute is on the de-stuffing clause for containers on the Vancouver waterfront. The de-stuffing clause that causes 86,000 containers bound for Canada to go into SeaTac every year and then often goes by American rail lines to Chicago and up into Canada. That is the basic issue. 365 days the longshoremen have been negotiating with the BC Maritime Employers, and I was down when I broke the story today talking about this to Norm Cunningham, the president of the Maritime Employers Association. 17 years ago, you employers gave the union this de-stuffing container facility clause.
Yeah.
And now you're mad at the union because they won't give up that de-stuffing clause. Am I correct?
Yeah, you're correct on that.
How many containers a year do we lose to the United States, to SeaTac, because of this de-stuffing, which makes them land down in the States and send up the containers to Vancouver by road?
Around about 80,000.
80,000?
About that, yeah.
How many containers did you bring in 1947 into the port of Vancouver?
1947.
In 1984.
Well, we had 147,000 in 84.
So 147,000 containers come into Vancouver direct, and 80...
No, that's import-export.
Import-export.
Yeah.
But we have 80,000 containers diverted on import to SeaTac.
That's right. Well, import, some export, yeah.
All right, now, have you a formula to try and, have you tried to make the union happy enough on a formula to make them give up the de-stuffing clause?
Yes, we have said that we will guarantee 725,000 hours, which related to 147,000 TEUs, which is 20 equivalent unit containers. And we're willing to guarantee those hours. Except if the economy falls off, then everything falls off proportionately. The hours would fall off proportionally. Things that we are outside of our control, yeah.
Because how many men would actually be put out of work in the Vancouver waterfront if the union surrendered the de-stuffing clause in any 1 year?
Well, that's problematical, probably less than 100.
100 jobs. But you are prepared to pay the union one way or another 724,000 hours at straight time, so they'll give up the de-stuffing.
As long as it's related to the number of 20 equivalent units, the 147,000 TEUs, yeah.
Well, that would be $10 or $12 million. Would you give that to union pension plan or what?
I don't know what we'd do with it, but it wouldn't be $10 or $12 million because number one, we don't think there'd be any loss to them or to us. But if the number of hours...
What overall?
No, if the 725,000 hours as related to 147,000 containers were to drop, then we will make up the difference, and whether we put it in the pension plan or welfare plan doesn't make any difference to us. It's money spent.
How long have you been negotiating?
12 months, tomorrow.
365 days?
365 days today, yeah.
Have you made any progress?
Oh, yeah, there's been some things dropped and so forth, and we have Dalton Larson, the commissioner's report there, which we hope would form the basis for a settlement, yeah.
But, I mean, this is a terrible body blow to British Columbia, you closing all the ports with a lockout.
Very distasteful. But we're losing the business anyway because people are diverting their ships out of here now because of the uncertainty of the situation.
You mean the word is around the world that there's might be a strike or a lockout in Vancouver?
That's right, and people are saying they're not going to gamble having their ships hung up in here. That's true.
So you've got a formula which the union won't accept, which would give them money for the jobs lost.
If there were any jobs lost. We say there won't be any.
But if there are,
we'll pick up the tab on it.
What about wage increases?
Well, that's all in the commissioner's report there, and that's all negotiable. Those things are there, and we're willing to try to negotiate a contract on the basis of Larson's report, but it must, as a part of the package, include the elimination of the container clause.
Mind you, I don't want to rub it in, but this clause was put in by the employers 17 years ago, and you were here.
The employers were part and parcel of it. I didn't like it at the time. I don't like it today. It's been proven to be very, very destructive to this industry and all of the employees that are working in it.
Is there any prospect of a settlement soon?
I guess that remains to be seen. We're available over the weekend if anybody wants to call us and anything changes. But as long as they tell us that the container clause is not negotiable as part of that package, then there's no use having any further meetings.
This is under federal and
It's under federal labor code, yeah.
Oh, so Mr. Van der Zand can't walk in now and bash your heads together?
Well, Mr. Van der Zand can do anything he wants to do, but it comes under the federal code.
And that's the key to it. It's a federal labor relations matter. There's no hope whatsoever, I believe, for a settlement of this clause, and therefore the 4,000 longshoremen will be locked out at 1 a.m. Monday. Here's Steve with the rundown.
Tonight, coffee merchant John Murchie wants to be the social credit MLA for Vancouver Centre, but the incumbent for that riding is Emery Barnes. He wants the job back for the NDP. They face off in the studio with Webster. Also tonight, Bob Bose, the NDP candidate for Surrey-Newton, meets a lonely voice in the West. He's Don Ross, the mayor of Surrey and Liberal candidate in the Surrey-Guilford-Surrey riding. But first, Bill Greveling launched a Rolls-Royce campaign to be mayor of Vancouver, but tonight he throws it into reverse. He's up first with Webster.
Bill Greveling went into the campaign for Mayor of Vancouver 2 or 3 months ago, and some people thought he was a serious candidate. Bill, you've got an announcement to make on the Webster show tonight. Just make your announcement.
My announcement is, Jack, that I've decided to relinquish my position as a serious candidate for the mayor's chair of Vancouver. I thank all those people who supported me, and I actually got a lot more support than I thought I would. But however, personal problems and those things that would stand in my way to do the best job I know how prompt me to just...
You're quitting. You're walking out.
I'm walking out, yes.
Because though you described yourself as a successful businessman, when you wanted a red light district in Vancouver.
Yes, I did.
But the real problem was your problems with lawsuits over money. Is that correct?
That's part of the problems, yes.
How many lawsuits for how much money?
I would say 2 or 3 for about $80,000.
Now, you knew that when you went into the campaign, Bill.
Not necessarily. No, I didn't know I was going to be hit with those before when I made my announcement.
You were hit with these before you announced your candidacy.
I was hit with one.
For how much?
$33,000.
$33,000.
But these were company accounts.
But you haven't settled any of these things yet.
One of them has been settled because they didn't sue in the first place. So
You've settled that one.
Yeah.
Don't you think you've kind of put a lot of people on the wrong track by your Rolls-Royce campaign, and all of a sudden you've got to walk out because of your money problems?
Not necessarily. I think it's better to walk out when and admit to you. Everyone has to stand up and be counted somewhere along the line. And now is the time to do it before I put anyone else to
More trouble, more problems.
Well, if that's what it's created.
Have you left any unpaid debts in your civic campaign?
None. None whatsoever.
You're clean as a whistle on that?
Clean as a whistle.
And you're now going off to struggle with your business problems?
Go out and see if I make some more money.
Who are you going to vote for, Harry Rankin or Gordon Gamble? No, don't answer that question, because they might not want to have your support. Bill,
no, I don't think we better.
Bill, I congratulate you for having guts enough to realize belatedly that you're not quite ready to go for mayor.
Next time.
Next time.
Yeah.
With no debts.
None. Money in my pocket.
And no lawsuits.
No lawsuits.
And no red light district.
No. Oh yes, a red light district going in.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Over my dead body.
Oh, okay.
My thanks to Bill Greveling. I'll be back after the break.
I'm in 15. Started.
How can you expect a debate with somebody like this who knows nothing about?
He's one of the original entrepreneurs in the community. You know, we want to do what we can to help him survive as an entrepreneur.
Nice shot there, Emery. Nice kick.
I want
Nice
you
kick.
to get after him on specifics.
Oh, I will. I'm just lining
I'd
up.
like
Look
you
at
to
this
get
one
after
here.
him on Van der Zandt. Right on. They'd vote for anybody as long as they get big teeth and smile.
Oh, he's a...
Get ready for that kill button.
Did you read the page I gave?
What page?
Grandfather came from Scotland.
No, I don't read that garbage. It's a... Emery Barnes is in his 15th year as a socialist member for Vancouver Centre. The team merchant John Murchie has... where did you join Social Credit?
I joined Social Credit 1 week after the NDP dug a hole in Robson Street and put 20 merchants out of business.
Do you know anything about politics, John?
Try me, Jack.
Okay, you try with him. Let me see you question him intelligibly on the NDP platform.
Now, I like Emery Barnes. We had breakfast this morning at CBC, but I want to ask you one thing, Mr. Barnes. Where's your partner?
His partner, Harcourt, has already been on this program. I told you on
He
issues.
has not resigned.
this program.
He has not resigned from the City Hall. He's hiding behind the mace. And actually, I was up there talking to Bill Curtis today. I almost took a can of mace and said, hey, Harcourt, out of the ivory tower, down on the streets, and let's resign. He is in conflict of interest with the MLA job of riding it. We have we've had the mayor of Vernon, who just resigns 12 o'clock tonight to take up the challenge for his provincial position in
John,
the SoCred.
okay, respond to that silly question.
John, actually, I think you should talk to Mike about that because you've had
Where
plenty
is
of
he?
time. Well, you could have called him this morning or yesterday or the day before. He's been a candidate for months.
I'll be there tomorrow morning.
Okay, let's
Thank you. Now let's get
move
down to the point. What do you think of people like Murchie who are riding on the coattails of Van der Zandt to try and get in?
Well, I think that John sees what he thinks is a fix. I think he sees the fix that started when Van der Zandt received such beautiful accolades in the province and in the Sun about just before the Whistler event. Zam a winner. You know, you remember those bold headlines, and everybody has been beating the drum. You know, it's like
What do you
the media.
think? What do you think he's going to be like as Premier Emery?
Well, let's face it, I'm a ex-social worker, you know. I mean, I'm very concerned. I'm a humanist at heart. And when I think of Van der Zandt, I think, you know, this man is amazing. I sat and watched him in the late 70s.
Don't give me the history. Give me an opinion.
And I think that Van der Zandt is a bit of a sleight of hand artist. And the reason I say that is because he hasn't come and explained how he became a born-again SoCred. First of all, remember, he quit. He called his colleagues gutless because they wouldn't do the things that he wanted to do.
Maybe he was right in some senses. You see, a leader has to identify himself. And I want to say Bill's identified himself. I've had a couple of talks with him. I mentioned my idea to him the other day of putting 1% tax. I call it a sympathy tax. And it's mine. It's nothing to do with anyone else in the party. And I'm not saying that is policy or party policy, but 1% sympathy tax on every dollar of food spent in this province to get away of food banks. There's no dignity for a man going down an alley and lining up in front of a church basement. Let's give him a card, let him shop with dignity, not food stamps where everyone watches him tear off the number.
John, right from the very beginning, when you say sympathy tax, you bother me. You know, we don't need sympathy. We need rights. We need dignity in this society.
Listen,
we do not need somebody
the
to say
basis of
we're gonna have
democracy is the strong lifting up the weak. Isn't that the basis?
Would you
I spent 7 years on Skid Row, 2 years at Central City Mission.
Just
I
a
know
minute.
what it is.
Just a minute. What do you mean? You were on Skid Row for 7 years? On your uppers?
No,
Don't
I
give
was
me
the
that.
lay pastor at Central City for 2 years. The record's clear. I spent the rest of my time, 5 years,
Would you
working out of
increase-
missions on Powell Street. I know what it is.
Would you
I never hung
increase
over.
the welfare rates right now?
I believe we have to have, as I said this morning on CBC, not a royal inquiry, but an investigation into the whole aspect of welfare. We need to take a look at the minimum wage. You know, what amazes me is that I find all the truck drivers and good Teamsters men, and I was a machinist union man, but you know, I see them going into McDonald's and enjoying a hamburger for $1.95, and they know everyone in there is on minimum wages, but they sure enjoy that hamburger.
With all due respect to
Do you
McDonald's.
eat at McDonald's?
Listen, Business is business.
Do you eat at
Everybody,
McDonald's?
you eat wherever
Do
you
you
want to
eat?
eat.
Okay.
You know, and I heard you this morning
Free
when
choice.
you said that. I don't think that's fair to pick on McDonald's.
I'm not picking
But I'll
on
tell
McDonald's.
you, just now that you've mentioned this major chain that you said was too poor to afford to pay an increase in
I
the
never
minimum
said
wage.
that statement. Now that's
Well,
a big
now,
statement. I'm
what did
saying
you
that
say?
if
What
I
did you say
said
about that?
That if McDonald's had to pay $4.50 an hour to those students, you'd find the hamburger prices going up.
Just a moment,
They're
please.
selling billions and billions and billions of hamburgers. You mean they can't afford
This
to
is
pay the
nonsense.
minimum
Let's
wage?
get back to business.
Let's get back to
The
facts.
Bennett government has starved education for money, it's alleged by the NDP. Do you believe the education system has been starved for money by the Bennett regime?
You
Yes
know-
or no?
There's two aspects to education, and here's where we're going. I believe secondary education or post-secondary education, where you're getting into the trades area,
Would you-
needs some more support.
More money.
More
What's the
money.
priority? What would your priority on spending be in terms of the total budget, the annual provincial budget?
Well, we haven't time to go through a
Yes, we have, with a little time.
Let's go.
Are you in favor of mega projects?
Depending on what the mega project is.
All right, let's switch the conversation now. Are you serious about your legislation to guarantee education, training, and a job to every young?
Absolutely, and it's about time.
Where are we going to get the money?
All right, we'll get the money from the same place
Where?
we got everything else.
You
All
mean-
of the mega. Well,
Borrow.
why
Doesn't
not?
grow on
In terms of
trees.
economics,
Money doesn't
in ter-
grow on
listen,
trees.
money
Be quiet,
doesn't grow-
John.
Money doesn't grow on trees, nor should it grow out of treasury bills that are being printed by the Minister of Finance in,
You know
in
why,
Victoria.
Emery, the Social Credit Party of BC is so good?
Has blown its
Listen,
philosophy.
It's got a better crew. It's got a better course.
What happened to deficit
It's
financing?
got better communities.
Let's not
There's
have
my
that
seat.
garbage read
But
from
here's-
your little
here's
script.
what- can-
Let me ask you a question.
Can I say one thing,
No,
Jack,
you
and then
can't.
you can
No,
talk?
you can't.
Okay, go ahead.
Because you're so amorphous in your generalized remarks, you're making no sense to anyone.
Well, let's take up hardcourts.
Well, no, we're not going to talk about hardcourt.
Well, he's part of this writing. I want to get Mike in a debate. I challenge Mike.
Listen, you're the people that gagged the candidates.
Look, in
Not me.
1975, the
That
deficit-
headline
Look.
is typical province.
You tell me what the headline is.
No one's ever gagged me.
No, because you can't be gagged for certain reasons.
Well, that's why I'm running.
That is a true story. 47 inexperienced candidates were advised by your premier after I broke the story from SoCred.
Now that's a
headquarters.
different story.
No, it's
yes,
not a
it
different
is. There's
story.
a vast difference between people who have not used to public speaking,
I want to
not
ask you,
outgoing,
just
to
a
sit
moment.
down and debate with people who've been sitting
Well,
over
you're
there
not
for
used to
5 years
public
doing
speaking.
nothing. I'm not.
Are you in favor of the big-time SoCred gambling casinos?
No way.
Are you?
Depending where they're going to be located.
Where would you locate them?
On a boat on the way to Seattle.
Have you made a deal already with Americans? Is that
I know
confirmed? Is
nothing
that worked
about
out?
that, and I'll tell you, if I do get to Victoria, I'll be a maverick and I will be a watchdog. I would like to know where
Are you
they're
in
going.
favor of ICBC?
Yes, I would continue ICBC.
Medicare?
But I'll tell you one thing.
Medicare.
Just 1 minute now.
Medicare?
Medicare, yes. Listen,
Good.
let me tell you something, and I'll be honest with anybody. Tommy Douglas,
Was a great hero.
man.
He was your great hero.
one of my great heroes.
So
And he
you're
was
a-
a Baptist like myself, but you know what bothers me? I want to know where the Tommy Douglases are today.
Okay.
I want to know where
John.
the men that challenge us today, instead of saying this, let me read.
No, I will not let you read
John,
one.
let me
Man,
just, look, John.
Jack.
Have your go at
Now,
them.
now, you know, in the
Go ahead.
in the late
Tell me.
70s, Bill Bennett used to say, "Not a dime without debate," right? You remember that? Now, just yes or no? Did he?
Sure,
Did
I
He can't say yes or no.
Okay. Well, now.
Go ahead.
And so what
I can
happened?
say
What
whatever
happened?
I
And what
want,
happened
Jack.
during the restraint? He comes in and he says, all of a sudden they can't afford to get enough revenue from enough resource revenue to balance up the budget. So now we're going to change the policy. We now have deficit financing. You remember that? In 1975, what was it? What was the debt? $5 billion. What is it today? $20 billion.
Debt
What happened to
across,
this?
Listen,
Hey,
debt
as you-
across
What's
this,
the debt in BC?
debt in BC right now is running somewhere, depending whether you tie up the corporate structure. We're getting close to 17. With the crown, with the crown,
19.6
it's
to
already
20
there.
billion, including Crown Corporation. They all have extra borrowing
right,
abilities, and
yeah.
it's
We're
just
getting
way
close
out of
to
line.
20.
But what happened to
let
this
me-
bid? What is restraint doing? It's a matter you say to us and the poor socialists. Every time you want to bring in improved
Is
programs
this a
like
debate or
English-
your platform?
Well,
Just
look,
a
I'm
minute. Don't
telling
you
you.
talk about
Look, we're
platforms.
talking about English second language for new Canadians that are coming in, and immigrant services for people. Remember, this is a multicultural society. We're talking about basic
I
human rights
exercise my
programs.
authority. We'll be back
We're
after
talking
the
about
break. I didn't succeed in asking any decent questions or getting any decent answers. So let's see what you can do. I'm really quite upset tonight. Just a minute. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes.
I would like to ask questions of Mr. Barnes.
Right.
I run a small business, and in the last few years, we've had to take salary cuts just to keep our business alive. But we've been able to maintain our staff because everybody's cut back.
And?
And your guaranteed program, how are you going to guarantee me a job? Like, I'm a small business owner. I own the business. And if business gets worse, how are you going to guarantee me a job and my staff a job?
Good question, an excellent question. Please answer.
Well, it's an excellent question, but I don't think the idea of the guarantee is to protect people who are in business. If the business fails or times get tough, that you can guarantee that person a job. The guarantee that Bob Skelly is talking about has to do with the Youth Guarantee Program.
How much will that cost?
Well, the figure is not known.
Okay, what do you think of that briefly, John?
Well, there's no way we're going to guarantee everybody a wage. That is pie in the sky, and anyone with any economic sense knows it is.
Good
There's
idea.
no questioning it.
And you're pleased that Van der Zaan threw in $50 million to settle the BCGEU?
It's got an advantage.
Do you realize that he did throw in $50 million? Thank you. Good. Next question. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Mr. Barnes.
Hello.
Yes, you're one of the most polite NDP members I've ever heard. I'm a teacher, and myself and many of my colleagues are very tired of the fabrications the British Columbia Teachers Federation has fed to the public on education. English as a second language, as Mr. Harcourt said a couple of days ago, has not been cut. Learning assistance centers, etc., are functioning. Class sizes are not huge. Sure, we'd all like a lot more, but I feel that there was a lot of waste in the school system, and perhaps the SoCreds have made an attempt to clean this up.
Okay, you made a good point. She says, and many people agree with her, that there was a lot of waste in the education system. Do you agree that it had to be cleaned up by Bennett?
I can't go along with her suggestion that the ESL programs are sufficient, but I will accept her comments and on face value.
Thank you. And you're happy with that?
Our listeners are bringing sanity back to the program, and they're going to do that on the 22nd of October.
Well, thank you very much, but the sanity will have to come from the listeners tonight. Go ahead, please.
How do you do?
Fine.
I'm basically wanting to direct a couple of questions to the man with the slogans, Mr. Murchie.
Right.
It's easy to give out the slogans, but I don't hear definite answers. I'm very concerned that the Social Credit Party, which he's now representing, are basically stealing our money to brainwash us with some of the TV ads, per se, the recent ones on Expo. I don't recall any money being passed for that. I'd like to know from him whether he thinks it's legitimate for the Premier of the province to be appearing claiming that some imaginary taxpayers are not being taxed, and in effect somebody's buying lottery tickets to pay the deficit.
Good
My second
question.
to him
What's your second?
is relating along the same lines. I basically would like to see money bills come before the Committee of the Whole. We seem to be ruled by order in council with order in council by the Social Credit Government, with closure being invoked to close debate.
Okay, the basic question he's asking is, do you believe public money should be spent by the government to polish its own image, as has been done by this government?
I want to answer him on the Expo issue. I wasn't over enthusiastic about the whole budget.
Asked you about
he
the
asked me
television
about
commercials.
the commercials about Expo. Now let's get the question.
Government commercials
That's
about
right.
Expo.
The facts are that Expo created thousands of jobs, and I'd like to ask him if the NDP party had been there and made the decision for or against Expo, but say they had, would they have created the jobs and continued it on?
You were asked a question, answer the question.
I have never seen a government in power, including the Conservatives, Liberals, or NDP, when they're in power, not use funding for advertising. The largest advertiser in Canada is the Canadian government.
Correct. Your answer is yes, it's perfectly proper for the government to spend
Within
money
limits.
for ads.
Within limits.
You answered the question eventually. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes.
Emery Barnes?
Yeah.
Hello.
You declared personal bankruptcy and left a crippled girl high and dry. You walked right out on her, and I want you to speak to that. And John Murchie,
Okay, hold on a
you
second.
promised us the Murch 1, a cheap electric car, and you never delivered. Now, both of you speak to those.
Hold on.
Hey,
I
thanks,
don't
friend.
feel it's quite fair to go into that, but it has been on the public record.
That's right.
Did you declare personal bankruptcy?
No, I did not. I did look into it. I decided not to go bankrupt. And in fact, I had a settlement with the party he's speaking of. She was a good friend of my daughter. I was very concerned. I did my best. I did not run away from it, and that matter has been settled to the satisfaction of all
Thank you.
parties.
Now,
concerned.
you and your car.
I told you it would come up,
You
Jack.
built it for me.
And
as a
did I
matter
not
of
show you
fact.
some pictures just earlier to what state we're at? We're at Malaspina College. The car, I laid it aside to finish an ultralight house, which I've been trying to get. And
Stick to the car.
stick to the car. We will be finishing that right after October the 22nd as a hobby. If not, I have someone to fill in on it. It's almost finished. It took me 3 years to get the time to do it because we don't have a progressive program on it.
Right, just one moment, please. It will be sold at $3,000, and it will have a windshield, a mirror made of marzipan,
That you
which
can
I
eat.
can eat again.
As a true Scot. You remember that
John,
statement?
there's a government policy out
Yes.
with respect to sanctions against South Africa. Now, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
British Columbia is the only province in Canada that remains uncommitted to the federal sanctions that have been brought down. And it's only through force that they are complying. Do you agree with the position that was taken by Bill Bennett and also by Van der Zand?
I believe that none of them know the real facts of South Africa, with all due respect. I happen to be close to that subject. I can appreciate the problems that are in South Africa, but I'll tell you this, sanctions are not going to answer the South African problem.
Are you against sanctions?
I asked, pardon me,
Are you
I
for-
asked, and I would ask, for an international team.
They tried that.
No. Not
Eminent-
beyond,
the
not beyond
John
the
Murchie,
limits.
stop it, stop
the
it,
eminent
stop it. I don't
persons,
want a
have
speech.
a-
I asked you a simple question. He did. Are you against the sanctions currently being imposed on South Africa? Yes or no?
I must admit, yes, if I had to come down on the
That's what I
definite
want.
side, but still,
What's your-
After the
let
break.
me ask you something.
No, don't take it away yet. Haven't taken it away yet? Good. Now,
Look-
just be quiet, please. I want to get another call in that makes sense, perhaps. Somebody who's been quite good. Make your answers shorter and more lucid. If you ever get into the house, you'll put everybody to sleep.
Oh, Jack,
Go ahead,
give me
please,
the
from Terrace.
opportunity. Give me the
Go ahead from
opportunity.
Terrace.
Yes, Mr. Murchie.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I've been following the political scene in BC for quite some time now. And tell me, why is it that both you and all of your colleagues around this province get that same old line, and it comes out at election time? Well, fellas, everything will be fine, and you'll all be working, but we have to have that investor confidence. And one more time, my goodness, I've gone to listen to that bag of wind from the Peace Country up there, who is
Phillips.
selling out our jobs and fueling the arguments of our Americans across the line on the lumber imports. 25 million into Louisiana Pacific. It's criminal.
Just a minute. It's not 25 million. It's 25 million American. It's 34 million. Do you know what we're talking about, John?
Oh, yes,
What are we
the
talking about?
About the investment in the pulp mill?
No,
and,
wafer
well,
board.
the wafer board mill.
Would you have given them $34 million loan and a $40 million plant?
I don't know the full stacks,
Well, I'm
circumstances behind it, but I'll tell you this, that there are ways to preserve jobs in this province. And I was on my platform Tuesday night, and even in the nomination committee, that I knew no one in that room before. I
And
got
you were
64
nominated.
out of 67.
You're magnificent. I'm much
Thank you.
obliged.
Thank
My
you.
thanks to your John Murchie, tea bags. And
Where is it? Have you given it away?
I wouldn't drink that tea if it was the last tea alive.
John,
Oh,
just a little commercial.
How
for
do you like that?
Everybody.
How do you like that?
Back to
You got that
sanity
this
after the
morning and
break.
he's still holding on to it.
Okay.
I have two politicians with me now, and they're both from Surrey. First, there is Don Ross, who has been the mayor of Surrey since 1980, and he's got a year left in his term, former Lions football player, a school teacher, and, first one you've seen on this programme during the campaign, a Liberal candidate. And on the other hand, I have Bob Bose, NDP Surrey-Newton. What do you do, Bob?
I'm a chemist, science.
You're a chemist, and he is running against Rita Johnson, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Transit Minister, who has twice cancelled out her appearance on this programme. That's her God-given right to cancel out, but otherwise she would have been here tonight. Now, they tell me some members of your family are not speaking to each other. What's that? Or is that an embarrassing question?
There's a difference of opinion between one of my brothers and I.
Because he nominated Rita Johnson.
Yes. Doesn't live in the constituency.
He doesn't live in the constituency. No. Well, I want to give my Liberal a first shot.
Sure.
What do the polls tell you? Do you have any chance of winning in Surrey, Guildford, Whalley as a Liberal?
I have a very good chance of winning in the Surrey-Guilford-Whalley riding, and Jack, I must say I'm running in that particular riding because sometime about last April it seemed a lot of you media types thought there should be a third-party influence in British Columbia, and they're looking for courageous people to stand up and be counted. Well, I did just that. Now I've got to get out and find all those courageous voters that'll vote for a Liberal in the Whalley-Guilford riding.
Now, as far as the government is concerned, and you're also in Surrey too, Bob, is there any particular thing that you would advocate be done there if you are elected?
In the Whalley-Guilford riding, of course, I would like to see the SkyTrain brought up across the river and up into the Whalley area itself. It's going to be one of the greatest booms to the financial community that there possibly could be, and I'd be anxious to see that.
But even a Liberal government, in the unlikely event, would find it very hard to raise money to dig it out to Chilliwack, to take it out to the airport, to take it across the river to Surrey-Whalley, wouldn't it? Surrey-Guildford.
Yes, but I'm not necessarily getting into programs of putting that SkyTrain all over the place all of a sudden. It'll take years, but we do have a promise from the former Premier and the Minister in charge of Transit to bring that SkyTrain to Whalley. I'm sure that'll happen.
Is there any Liberal platform for this election? I haven't had the word of it myself yet.
Oh, yes, certainly. I have them all right here, Jack, if we don't have time to get into that today.
Couple of them, perhaps. What would you do about education funding?
Well, I think education's been sadly neglected. Our school board or school district in Vancouver is the lowest funded of its type in Canada. We have fewer students graduating from high school and going into post-secondary education of any province in Canada. And right now, our average wages for our teachers are about 10% less than the rest of Canada. And you were talking about ESL just a few minutes ago. Sure, it still exists in the schools, but it only exists because teachers are making sacrifices by carrying larger and larger classes so that they can keep that very important program in place.
Now, Bob Bose, you're an NDPer.
Right.
Now, what do you think is the most important thing that should be done for your Surrey-Newton?
Well, we've got major needs for education, as Don has just mentioned, proper transportation, and that includes buses, and I must say that there's some disturbing indication that coming from Rita Johnson's BC Transit that they may not in fact extend the rapid transit system into Whalley. They have made a commitment to get it over the bridge, a $170 million commitment, but Rita Johnson in a recent report that was pulled back, it wasn't actually released, it was intended to be released on Wednesday, suggests that it is only the minister's aim to get it to Whalley, and I think Don is focused on the real importance of having rapid transit delivered to the Whalley core. Whalley is to be one of the major regional town centers.
What do you make of all the press attacks on your leader's nervousness? It's now reached the Globe and Mail. Huge story. NDP leader Skelly has become the issue instead of the issue maker. Are you embarrassed by Skelly's nervousness?
Absolutely not. I happen to have a great deal of confidence in Bob Skelly, and if he chokes, that's a human problem, and he's overcome it. He knows what he's doing. He has policies. He has self-assurance. He knows what he wants for this province, just as I believe our party does. So I haven't got the slightest worry about him.
Are you getting help? Perhaps you can tell me this, and you maybe save this for Art Lee next week, but are the federal Liberals, is Turner keeping his promise and kicking in some money to help finance the campaign for the BC Liberals?
Well, I've been told that there is going to be some help coming from downtown and from Ottawa, but I'm not holding my breath waiting for it, I can assure you. I launched into this campaign on my own resources, planning on doing my very best as a candidate in that riding, and I'm not waiting for anything.
You're not going to finish up $100,000 in debt or anything stupid like that?
Oh, heavens no. I'm a campaigner. I've been through many, and I've never come out.
Have you worked with Van der Zam in the Surrey area at all?
Yes, I worked with Bill Van der Zam, and when he was a mayor, I was an alderman 1972 and 73. I was elected on his coattails the first time I got elected, and I'm not too happy about that, and I set out to do it my own way.
But he's a good guy, isn't he?
Well, He's a very pleasant guy. I would rather see somebody running on substance rather than style, though, because I don't really think style is what is going to run a country. I think substance runs a country.
What do you think of him? Might as well get
I've
on.
had to work with him too.
Oh yeah, you
I
worked
was
with
on
him.
the regional district board and trying to manage the transit system. Don was on the board. The two of us represented Surrey. And I spent a year trying to negotiate with Bill van der Zam, and it was the most frustrating experience in my life. There were serious issues that had to be attacked, had to be dealt with: transit reorganization, transit funding, the SkyTrain question, the choice of technology, and all we got were a lot of smiles. And in the final analysis, he did what he damn well wanted anyhow.
Oh, you mean he's not a good team worker?
No, not at all. And furthermore, he didn't really listen to us.
Yeah, it was frustrating to be on council when Bill was the mayor, because a lot of the decisions were made in the mayor's office, and not the council was rather frustrated. And one of the reasons there was always a lot of wrangling on the Surrey Municipal Council was because of the lack of involvement of aldermen.
But isn't it amazing how the Bennett government has just vanished without trace? It's just gone. And the Bill who quit has taken over that party and is leading it undoubtedly to a major victory.
Oh, it's the media that's put this on, Jack. They've blown it totally out of proportion. I think they've been totally unfair to the Premier and totally unfair to the voting public. They put on this big myth that there's some kind of a superhero going to lead this country out of its doldrums. I just don't believe it. Our forestry industry is still in trouble. Our mining is still in trouble. Our whole economy is in trouble, and we're living on a bunch of promises. And I say it takes more than promises to run a province.
But mind you, he stepped in and settled the BCGEU very quickly, didn't he? Slapped in another $50 million.
Well, that was easy enough. That was easy enough. But what is he going to do to bring labor peace, proper cooperation between management and labor in this province? He hasn't said one thing about bringing an accord. Bob Skelly has come forward with an accord.
But he talks about renewal and non-confrontation, and he certainly is trying to hit the heads of the big lumber companies on the top of their heads to get a settlement.
I wonder how hard he's hitting them on top of the head, or whether he's trying to talk them into to participating in the buyout of this election. I would think that he needs something like that right now, because his campaign is slipping somewhat with this gagging business, which is totally a travesty against democracy. How can people judge their candidates and pick the best for their area if they don't even see them? It could be some gorilla from somewhere with a fancy name.
Well, I brought a tea merchant on an MLA, and it wasn't exactly an enlightening section.
Well, you know, Don, I'm glad to be on the program with Don, but I was hoping to be across the table from Rita Johnson so that I could ask her some straightforward, simple questions that involve her ministry.
But she cancelled that not once but twice.
Well, it's really disappointing, because there are major issues regarding transit reorganization, transit funding. I'd like to raise the question of agricultural land reserve and their commitment to agriculture.
What about the 500,000 jobs that promised by the year 2000? That's in Delta, isn't it?
Well, it's all over the province, but I think it was best described by Mike Harcourt as PAP, you know.
Yeah.
There's no plan behind that.
Okay, I've got calls now to Mayor Don Ross, who's a Liberal candidate in Surrey-Guilford-Whalley, and Bob Bose, who's NDP candidate in Surrey-Newton. Might get some good calls. Now, after the break. Thank goodness. Here is Mayor Don Ross, the Liberal from Surrey, and Bob Bose, an NDP from Surrey. And here's this question. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hello, Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to know from these two, I mean, the first two you've had that have made any darn sense at all, you can listen to them. What are they going to do for all these people that are left jobless after Expo? I'd really like to know.
Who wants to tackle that one?
Well, of course, the Liberals do have a platform of government that would inject several millions of dollars into our economy. But I really do honestly think that our platform to provide incentives to small business, to provide an incentive to our mining industry and our forest industry to try and get them turned around and producing more jobs is the answer.
We have got a major problem for jobs first.
Major program.
Major program for jobs first in this province, and it certainly is. Again, reforestation. Getting a lot of these are young people, and if there was any money going into the education system, they could be absorbed quickly and for good purpose.
But we are having a tough financial time, and with this new lockout on the waterfront,
far better to be having them in school than sitting on the street. Costing all kinds of problems.
Go ahead, please.
How do you do, Jack?
Yep.
Basically, my question's one to Bob Bose and then one for each candidate. I would like to ask Bob Bose, as the NDP representative here, if the NDP is elected, will they tell us what expos cost us? Because it appears SoCreds won't. Bob, go for it.
Well, you know, obviously it's got to be properly audited. I mean, it will have been history, but I think the people should know what the consequences of those decisions were. The Pacific Group has suggested $500 million. I think close to $300 million is what Expo is talking about, and it'll fall in there someplace.
Yeah, I mean, it's not...
Thank you.
Thank you very much. How about you,
My
Bob?
second question is for both candidates, and it's been a concern of mine in this election. I live in the Surrey area, and in Surrey, for instance, the Social Credit Party nominated several people with criminal records. I'm wondering whether or not these men feel that people that have broken laws should be allowed to go make laws.
Well, one of them withdrew and was defeated but only got 3 or 4 votes.
That was cooked up by the SoCred brass, Jack. I watched SoCred brass rush through the crowd asking people to boo Makitka at that meeting. Quite interesting.
Well, maybe that was a good idea.
Maybe it was.
I don't think the morality...
But Bill Reid got in.
Yeah, I don't think the morality has changed with social credit. I don't think very much has changed at all. And this gagging of the candidates isn't new for social credit. They've done this repeatedly over the years. So if you hear someone suggesting to you that there's a fresh start, I say it's a lot of bull.
And the candidate in question, Bill Reid, certainly should have resigned forthwith and then gone to the people to have a mandate again. He didn't do it.
Those standards are not required nowadays. There were other incidents. Now I don't want to drag them up in the Bennett government, where the people should have resigned from the cabinet forthwith. And I've got to give Van der Zalm credit for making sure that one way or another these people are not in the cabinet now.
One of them is. One of them is.
No, none of them is. I'm sorry to tell you. One is not running again, and one is not running again. They will be out in due course.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fair enough, I think. And I don't particularly relish these questions, but they've got to be handled. Next one. I'm getting chicken in my old age. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
That's right.
Yeah, I would just like to say that, the media's criticism of Bob Skelly, that he's having problems in his speeches, I think it's totally ridiculous, simply because we don't need someone that's running around smiling all the time and giving a bunch of evasive answers. I think it is totally ridiculous that what the media has done to Bob Skelly, and the NDP, as far as I'm concerned, they're for the worker. The social credit they seem to be concerned about is big business, and that is it. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and they've had big mega projects that absolutely create no jobs at all. And instead of pumping millions and millions of dollars, why don't they get the youth back to work?
Good point. Okay, just leave it that for the moment. Let me tell you that in today's election campaigns, don't blame the media. If you have a national leader like Stanfield fumbling a ball, or if you have a guy like Skelly apparently having an anxiety attack and he asks the press conference to start again, do not expect any newsman worthy of his salt to ignore that. It is an indication of something. Now, you may disagree with me, Bob, but I would have run that stuff.
I have no problem with dealing with the facts as they occur. What does disturb me is if the rest of this campaign ends up focusing on that when there's a lot of good material that the people should be hearing about, debating. There are issues out there. I want to know what the Social Credit Party has in mind for the Agricultural Land Reserve. Bill Van der Zalm is talking about taking 1,600 hectares of agricultural land out of the Delta.
And he's also talking about decentralizing the agricultural land reserve.
Well, it's an attack on the integrity of it, and it's been pretty fragile all the way through the last 11 years.
You say don't blame the media, Jack, but one must realize the media is absolutely ruthless and impersonal in reporting, and so they should be, because they must maintain an arm's length and objective.
We have run clips of Bill Bennett in his bad days, which were almost as bad, if not as bad, as Skelly's appearance on his two public shivers. So I make no apologies for that whatsoever.
Certainly.
But let's get on from there. Let's ask what they intend to do with education.
What you're saying to me is that people are being distracted by these charisma or non-charisma issues and ignoring the platforms of a legitimate political
Well, if
party.
they ignore them, we're going to have to live with the consequences after the 22nd. And
But that may be a reflection, gentlemen, on the state of political knowledge and literacy in the province of British Columbia, which has suffered from paranoid polarization for 25 years.
Absolutely. The reason I'm here, Jack, is that I know that this vast violent swings have to stop somewhere, and unless we get a few people in the middle, it won't stop.
Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The government of BC created and provides the ambulance service, and probably the best in North America. However, I'd like to know what either gentleman's position is in the expansion of the service in Surrey, where there's only one ambulance after midnight every night.
Gentlemen?
Well, go ahead.
Well, look at it. Ambulance, health care, the basic services to people in Surrey are really in bad shape. You know, we have, somebody said earlier, we needed 300 beds for 100,000 residents. We have 176,000 residents in Surrey, and the Surrey Memorial Hospital serves Delta and Surrey and parts of Langley.
He just gave you 15,
no service.
He just gave you 15 million for expansion.
You know what that expansion is?
No.
Provides for diagnostic services, provides for dietetics and some of those kinds of services. Not one new bed will be created from that $13 million. Not one new bed. We still have close to 80 or 90 extended care patients in acute care beds in the Surrey Memorial Hospital, and there's nothing on the drawing boards for new beds.
Well, the reason there's only one ambulance, of course, after midnight is because of the severe budget cutbacks that hospitals have had to endure over the last 5 years. And unless there's more funding, more help for health care facilities, then I don't see an improvement in that. No. But I certainly think it needs addressing.
But money has to be borrowed for it because of the incredible drop in government revenues. Sales tax.
That's not true. My goodness, I thought there was an unlimited bag of money over there in Victoria, the way they've been spreading it out.
Oh, he's only spread out 50 million, 75 million, 450 million.
$1 billion to Richmond.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, if they'd managed...
How much to Richmond?
Oh, it cost $1 billion to put SkyTrain down to
$1 billion
Richmond.
to Richmond, I'd forgotten about that.
If the Social Credit Party would have been managing the forest properly, and if they'd get down to some proper management techniques, proper competitive bidding in the forest, we'd have another $600 or $700 million to do some of the things that the people really need in our province.
So you might be the lone Liberal elected.
I hope I'm elected, and I hope there's a few others with me.
And you've got to battle Rita.
Yes, a long-time colleague on Surrey Council.
My thanks to you, gentlemen, for quite a dignified little debate. Tom Ross, Liberal, Surrey-Guilford-Whalley, Bob Bose, NDP, Surrey-Newton. I'll be back after the break. I've got a surprise guest, news type, Monday night. Don't want to tell you what it is. Other people will try and steal them. And then I've got the two other leaders of the Tories and the Liberals on the air. Glad that program's over. Monday, 5 p.m.